Hey, good morning. Welcome to another fun episode of Spirituality at Ground Level. My name is Jeff Harrison, and today I'm going to do something very, very different. I don't think I've ever had a guest. So she is on my maiden voyage. So I look forward to her just carrying all the weight of the show on her shoulders because she has a spirit stronger than all of outdoors, and I can't wait to get started. We have a guest today, and we're gonna kind of address some of the things going on in our world as we're going through right now, some of the divisiveness, some of the confrontation, things of that nature. And I thought, who better to ask than someone who probably deals with this on a daily basis in a spiritual realm, much higher level of consciousness than myself, and really get some ideas and almost help us create, if you will, a roadmap on how we can navigate through this and really come out the other side and really be maybe more enlightened, definitely higher consciousness, and realize it doesn't have to be this way. So I really want to make that great, strong welcome, and I want to welcome in Reverend Bonnie Rose from Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. Good morning. Thank you for joining us, Reverend Bonnie.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I didn't know I was your maiden voyage in this realm, so thank you.
Yeah, this is one of those shows where usually it's me, and I kind of put in a solid 20 minutes because that's kind of, a lot of times that's around the level of, I think, our attention when it's just one talking head. So so thank you so much for being here. Hey, before we get started, maybe take a second for those of those watching that maybe, hey, they don't know who you are. Give us a little insight of who Reverend Bonnie Rose is.
Sure. Okay. So I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in Westchester County, which is one of the suburbs of New York. And then I went to nursing school in North Carolina, and then I went to music school in North Carolina. So I have a degree in both nursing and music. Came back to New York, worked as a singer and a nurse, as an opera singer. And then I went on a national tour of a Broadway show where I was acting in the show. And I also was a cat handler. They had a live cat in the show. So I handled the cat and her understudy. So after that, my husband and I decided that there was life beyond New York, and we moved out to California. And that's where I got really involved in our denomination, in Science of Mind, Centers for Spiritual Living. It was called Science of Mind back then. So went to church in North Hollywood, decided to go to the School of Ministry, and then just out of the blue, I was walking my dog on the beach in Ventura, and I was wearing a Science of Mind sweatshirt, and somebody came up to me and started talking. Had never intended to be a church minister at all. But after I had that conversation with that person, I said, well, my dog really likes Ventura. I think if that church in Ventura opens up, I might apply for the position. And then 2 weeks later, the minister quit. So I felt like it was Spirit nudging me. So I applied for the job, ended up getting it. And that was about 17 and a half years ago. So I've been there for quite a while, and it's been quite an adventure, beautiful journey.
Well, it's amazing, your story, coming from Broadway, and I didn't know about the cat handler part.
Yes,
I'll have to dig a little deeper into that, but that sounds eerily familiar to our new pastor here in our spiritual director here in Palm Desert with Reverend James Mellon. And I asked him, I said, hey, do you know Reverend Bonnie? He says, oh my gosh, of course I know Reverend Bonnie. And, so I didn't realize your background had been in Broadway.
It was really my husband, but he got me started, and I did that tour. So it was great.
Well, now you were a cat handler, but and I just want to point that out there that you are also not only cats, but you are a lover of animals, and you've got a couple of dogs. We may hear them in the background. Tell us about going from a cat handler to having dogs.
Well, yes, we started out with cats because cats are a little easier if you travel, and lives of singers and actors are pretty mobile. But then when our cat died, the one who was the understudy in the Broadway tour passed away, my friend suggested that we get a puppy, and she had a very special puppy in mind. And first we said no. I say no to many things that God wants me to do. That's my first response usually. But we ended up getting this puppy, and then we got completely hooked on dogs. And we have Hungarian pointers, Vizslas. And then that just opened up the floodgates. And now we've got 2 Vizslas, and we have another cat, and 2 guinea pigs, a rabbit, about 13 birds, 2 box turtles, and about 20 fish. So we're set for animals. We got it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exciting. So now I know in one of our other conversations off camera, we had talked about, you're going to have a petting zoo, if you will.
Yes.
You might name it differently, but where you're going to have some animals in the sanctuary. And you said anything to get goats in the sanctuary or animals in the sanctuary. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So every Christmas Eve we have a sort of theatrical congregation as well, and we write a script. It started out as a nativity, but it's evolved into, as you said, any excuse to get animals in the sanctuary. And then at the end, we have a grand parade, a grand finale, where we have a friend. Her name is Tina, and she has a big petting zoo with lots of rescue animals, and they all come in the sanctuary. We've had a horse, a donkey, an alpaca, pigs, and sheep, goats, chickens, bunnies, guinea pigs, all kinds. That's about, well, dogs too, but yeah, pretty much any excuse. And then for special occasions, they come and visit us. If we have a guest speaker who's a great animal lover, sometimes I'll surprise them with a pig on stage or something like that. And then when our children's program opens again, which, fingers crossed, given what's going on, we're not exactly sure. We're hoping for September 19th, and we'll have our friend Tina come with her animals then, and have some inside, some outside, and just open it up to the community.
That'd be fun. Hey,
Yeah.
I want to kind of dive into today's topic because it does seem relevant that we talk about this, and I really want to try to come from, it's called spirituality at ground level because, hey, I'm just a layman. I'm out there doing my thing on a daily basis. I'm not doing what you're doing, ministering at the level that you're ministering. And first of all, thank you for doing this. But I want to talk about what appears to be for some people that there is divisiveness. And I want to give just a real quick example. I love playing pickleball, if you're familiar with pickleball.
Don't know what that is.
Yesterday morning, I start early, 5:45, 6 o'clock, and I'm playing with 3 other people. And a woman walks up and she puts her paddle down, and that's kind of the process. And as we came off the court, there's a process we call paddling up, and we put our 4 paddles together. And I noticed the lady had been sitting there for a while waiting because there's no one else there. We were there early. And so we came off the court and put our 4 paddles down, and she was expecting to play with 3 of us. And we explained that, and she became very upset, and she didn't want to talk. Like she said, that's very selfish. And I went over and I said, hey, can we hit the reset button? I said, this is just normal for this. And she said, well, it's very unfair. And I said, I understand. And I see that from your situation. And I want to stop right there because it feels like, and hey, I'm no saint. I'll just put that out there. And people who know me know, I try my best, but I'm not a saint. But it seems like there is no reset button, and it's not one side wants to listen to the other. It's my side is right and you are wrong.
Right.
Can you kind of hitch a ride on and tell us what you're seeing in the community, and more importantly, how you're helping us get past that my side is the right side?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I want to clarify that I also am no saint. So you're in good company, Jeff. I far from a saint. And, I don't always know what to do, but I can just tell you what I see. And that is as beautiful as social media is, as much of a boon that it is. I'm also on the Nextdoor chat, Nextdoor, that app that you put on your phone. And I just see a lot of people arguing about all kinds of things. One of the big debates, I'm going to stick to something that's sort of non-controversial at the moment, but one of the big debates in my neighborhood is firecrackers. 4th of July has passed, and they just made firecrackers in my community illegal, but there's still a lot of illegal firecrackers going on. And people are deeply passionate about whether or not we should be setting off firecrackers. And what I see is kind of exactly what you said, is that people seem to be unable to listen to one another and hear something other than what they believe. One of the things that I tell my congregation is let's see. So we're what I would call a center of non-duality, and we. That means that everything belongs. Everything is part of this oneness, this great oneness. So within that oneness, there are many, many streams of what we call truth, but I would call them perspective. So one of the things that I do with my congregation is when they find that they are really anchoring in something and calling it truth, when it's really only their perspective, they'll say, but it's real, it's real. I'll say, okay, great. So touch your elbow. So touch your elbow. And if you're watching, you can touch your elbow. And I'll say, are you touching your body? And they'll say, yes, of course I'm touching my body. Okay, are you touching all of your body? Well, no. So the metaphor there is that so often when we're anchoring in an opinion and calling it truth, and we're calling it the only truth, when really there's this whole vast realm of different perspectives that are just as true as ours. So one of the things that I try and do is to invite people to back up and just at least be willing to listen to another perspective versus getting so sucked into our own perspective and saying, this is the only way to think. Really, there are many, many ways to think. And I think that we can at least start by listening and listening respectfully. Another thing that I use a lot in my center is the metaphor of Rumi's field. Now, I've recently learned that this translation is not as accurate as it could be, but Rumi's field is from a poem by Jalaluddin Rumi, and I'll paraphrase it, out beyond ideas of right and wrong, there's a field, I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. And so I encourage people to consider Rumi's field, that there is a place in consciousness that is out beyond the perception of right and wrong. And if we're in that place together, if we're willing to just stick a toe into Rumi's field, to touch the hem of the garment, of the Christ consciousness, then possibly there's an opening for deeper understanding. It's not so much about being right or wrong. Perhaps understanding and greater compassion is really the prize in conversations like this.
Well, I just found the name of my new book. My next book is Can You Touch Your Elbow? I love that.
Good. I'm great. That's great. Absolutely.
I just love that. And it just kind of gives me those cold chills, when you get like, oh, that is magical, because I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, you're not touching your whole body. So it's not the entire truth. It's just a piece of that.
Right.
That's brilliant.
Thank you.
As we see these situations arise, and starting that creative, or excuse me, that respectful communication. How do we even? Oh, and I want to go back to that story now of the woman sitting there.
Yes,
she refused to let me in there. She just said no, and she said, "You're just selfish, and I'm not going to play." And I'm like, hey, come on, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. How bad can it be? Let's start. And then she said no. Yeah. So I thought, you know what? This is more about her. It's not me.
Right.
And I'm here for another reason. So I walked away, not disrespectfully. Well, then the two gals I was playing against and with, one of them went over and talked to her. And next thing you know, she's coming in and she's playing.
Yeah.
And so this morning I saw her, the gal who went over and spoke to her. And I said, what did you say? And she said, I told her to get her butt up and be a big girl and get in here and play. I'm like, wow, that wouldn't have worked had I said that. I don't think.
No.
And so I guess it was a time and a place for that.
Yeah.
How do we understand? How do we start to understand, hey, there's a time and a place when there are angry people out there, and we've seen it across our country now for far too long.
Yes.
That there are people that are beyond approaching. Do we just walk away, or what do we do?
Well, I have a couple of thoughts on that. Knowing, you probably know by now that I love metaphor, and one of the things that I often do in my church and in our church services is I'll use a hula hoop. And that's a whole other story about how I never thought I could use a hula hoop. And then in my 50s, I learned how to use one. But one of the things I tell people, people who are afraid that the world is too angry and that they're going to get attacked or trampled or hurt in some way by somebody who's angry, whether it's emotionally or physically, I say, love everybody, but, imagine that you have a hula hoop around you, and somebody can be like really near the edge of your hula hoop. Somebody can be way out here. Some people are going to be a little closer in. Some people are going to be really close to your heart. Keep everybody in your hula hoop, but hold some people at a distance. The other thing that I sometimes tell people too is that it actually is a kindness. It's a kindness to not engage with people where there's absolutely no hope of reconciliation, whether it's on your part or their part. I liken it to doing a different dance. Like there are people in my life that I hold in the perimeter of my hula hoop because I know that they want to do a different dance than me. So it would be like me trying to salsa while they're trying to do the waltz, and it's just not going to work. We're just going to step on each other's feet. So it's actually a kindness to hold them at a distance. One more thing about your encounter with that woman is that, you know, I always think this, and I'm assuming that other people think this too, that like, if we're really good, if we're really spiritual, if we're really doing what we're supposed to be doing, the healing's going to come through us. But sometimes the healing comes through us getting out of the way and letting somebody else be the bearer of the healing energy. So perhaps your willingness to walk away opened up the space for your friend to be the bearer of tough love, or telling that woman to stop being a baby and start playing. And I just think that there's a much bigger picture, a much bigger reality at stake. And sometimes it is our place to get out of the way and allow that reality to give birth to itself, but not necessarily through us.
I like the whole idea of the hula hoop, and you know, how close do you let them in, and if not, they can still be in the circle, but they're on the outside of that circle or at the
Yeah.
edge of that circle, so they're
Yeah.
not consuming us, right?
Right.
Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Tipping Point.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things I took from that I thought was so powerful to change the mindset of a nation or a world was, you only need to get to 10%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my thought is, I looked at it and said, well, okay, how can we apply this 10% to what we're doing right now? Right now, is there 10% of the people out there that are really, really angry, and because of the way it is sensationalized or portrayed in the news and whatnot, we think everyone is like that?
Yeah.
Or is it everyone is like that, and I just happen to keep bumping into the 10% or going, I don't know what's going on? What are your thoughts on that?
So now you're getting me all excited, because this is like my favorite thing in the world. So one of the things that I study is mystical Christianity, and I've recently been reading a book by Cynthia Bourgeault about the mystical Jesus. And there's that famous quote that I think most people know, that Jesus quotes the Torah. That's because he was a rabbi. He quotes the Torah, and he says, "Love God," but then he says, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself." And many people believe that to mean love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. But what Cynthia Bourgeault has pointed out in this book is that it's actually there's an immediacy to loving your neighbor. So as you love anybody, you love everybody. So this is the part that gets me excited, because I see love, whether it's directed at the person who is being hateful or angry or mean towards you. And I do actually believe, backing up just a little bit, that the squeaky wheel, the angry wheel, is getting all of the attention, and that there are so many great people behind the scenes doing the work of kindness and doing the work of grace. But back to what I was just saying, as we love anybody, we love everybody. She says to think of it like a hologram, where it's infinite, like fractals of light going out. I don't really understand holograms that well, so I think of it as a prism. Whenever we love anybody, it's like a beam of light hits a prism, and the light disperses everywhere in different colors. So I think the more that we can have confidence in that, and the more that we can practice it, the more that becomes our reality. You know, in our teaching, we talk a lot about changing our thinking and changing our lives. And teachers such as Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan mystic, talks about that we not only do we think ourselves into a new way of living, we live ourselves into a new way of thinking. So if we're practicing kindness towards people that have nothing to do with all of the brouhaha that's going on in the news and the media and all of that, if I practice kindness with the person who does my pedicure, that's a prism of light that's being sent into the world, and that grows and that multiplies and that makes a difference.
I think that's so true because when we think about, hey, how can I, we've heard that we all have a gift and we're supposed to share that, and we're
Yeah.
thinking, some people might think, well, my gift is to change the world, and that is so overwhelming that sometimes we don't get out of the starting blocks. Instead
Yes.
of saying,
Yes.
hey, how can I change my world? And as you point out, thoughts become form.
Right.
And we have to start from inside. It's curing the outside is starting with the curing of the inside.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
One thing I really kind of hooked my wagon to is a report that came out a couple of years ago, and it doesn't mean to be political, but it
Hmm.
was political. It said there were 90, or I think 88 questions given to a group of liberals and a group of conservatives,
Hmm.
and 85 of those they answered exactly the same.
Yeah.
There were only three that they disagreed on.
Hmm.
And yet, when we listen to the world, you would think that a conservative and a liberal could never be in the same room together without a referee.
I know.
And
Yeah.
yet, so that's that whole mindset of what is, as you say, am I touching my elbow? Yes, but that's not the whole truth.
Right. Right.
There seems to be some control of voices being able to say, hey, people like you that can go out and say, hey, we are one and we
Hmm.
can get through this.
Hmm.
There seems to be some groups out there that are kind of holding that voice down. And I'm
Hmm.
asking you, hey, how can we get your voice and your power and your strength out into the universe to more people?
Mm. Well, I'm working on it. I don't know that it's that. I don't know that it's going to come about in a normal way, in a way
Mm.
that we're used to. I think there might have to be a paradigm shift. This is actually a very old way. It's from the Franciscan mystics, where they talk about the quiet practice of the better. So quiet practice of the better, the quiet practice of kindness, the quiet practice of focusing on the small and recognizing that in infinity there is no small and there is no large. So
Mm.
these voices that seem so loud and that seem so against, in infinity there really is no loudness, there is no softness, there is no against. And I think the more that we are able to focus on the silence that holds everything, who was it? I think John of the Cross said silence is God's first language, and Father
Mm.
Keating echoed that. If we're able to focus on that silence and be the observer of what's happening, yet continue to do what seems to be the most loving thing in any given situation, whether it's holding somebody at the perimeter of your hula hoop or drawing somebody in or listening or just saying, we're doing a really different dance, I need to go to the other side, even if it seems like it's not making a difference, because the world is going to tell you that it's not. If there's a still small voice in us that continues to affirm that it is making a difference, then it will make a difference.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that gives that just hearing those words gives me strength to say, hey, you know what? I can still do my part,
Yeah.
and it's not a massive boulder going up a
Right.
78-degree grade.
Yeah.
So thank you. Hey, I kind of want to. I know you're busy, and I don't want to take all your time because I could do this all day long. I love talking about all of the things we're talking because it feels like there are new solutions that come to us and through us by having these kind of conversations, and not in a way that we're talking about there's problems, but hey, what are the answers?
Hmm.
So I have to ask
Hmm.
you a question. If you had a magic wand and you had three things, three wishes you could make that would really create the world and envision it the way you teach it at Ventura Center for Spiritual Living, what would they be?
Um, so I think kind of what I've said already. One of them would be to recognize that our truth is not the only truth, and that all truth has validity. And really, what I'm talking about there is non-duality, stepping back and recognizing that there's a bigger picture that holds all realities. So identifying, Joel Goldsmith, and I think Ernest Holmes too, talked a lot about identifying. We want to identify with this little tiny piece over here in reality that we call our perspective, but stepping back and identifying with a greater reality, with a greater wholeness. I'm trying to think of a metaphor, but it's sort of like going to a mega store, like say Costco or something, and going to Costco and finding the olives and saying, this is Costco, and just being hyper focused on the olives. And granted, there are a lot of olives in Costco. The jars are really big, but recognizing that beyond what we're focused on, there's this huge reality. So being willing to step back and see the greater whole. So that's one of my wishes is a non-dual perspective. The other one would be, I think, to recognize our place in reality. I think that people like us, Jeff, as you were just speaking before, and by the way, you asked fantastic questions, and I could talk with you all day about this as well, is to recognize the trap of futility, of feeling like what we're doing is futile because the other voices are so loud. But just again, to engage in that quiet practice of the better, the quiet practice of that which is sacred, that which is holy, that which focuses on the highest and best for all people. That's something that we miss sometimes, is recognizing what is the best for all beings concerned. So that quiet, our place in reality is to focus on sharing love and doing the highest and best for all beings. So that would be my second wish. And then the third wish is really simple, because I think that kindness is the delivery system for all of that. That I'm talking about infinite love. When I talk about God, when I talk about reality, when I talk about non-dual, I'm just talking about love. When I'm talking about doing the highest and best for people, it's love. And it may be love that doesn't necessarily look like what we've learned that love is, like when you had to step aside from that person and let your friend kind of talk better sense into her, perhaps. But just surrendering to a love that's greater than we know. And it's a lot of words and it's complicated, but really the simplest way to think of it is just doing small acts of kindness wherever we are, and allowing that to be our guide. So that's it.
I love that. Those are three great wishes. And, I have to put this in here, and I meant to wear it today, and I thought, that might be a little cheesy, but you sent me a t-shirt
Yeah.
that I wear all the time. And I used to wear it when I play pickleball because as a new player, it was like, hey, just be kind.
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah.
it really, when I walk in someplace and I have that shirt on, it really does seem to, you can see their eyes different. Yeah, people's eyes are different. Maybe their shoulders come down a little bit. They're not so tense. It
Yes.
is a great message. And that's that silence that you were talking about. That's that first language that maybe I didn't have to say anything. I just had to wear that shirt. So you gave me that shirt. Tell me a little bit about that whole campaign behind that
process. Yeah. So that shirt has been a thing in our center. We brought 17 children from India that lived in the slums of India. We brought them to our center and also to Southern California and the United States. They did a world tour, and we did the fundraising to bring them from India to California. And the name of their show is Jai Jagat, which is like glory to the planet, glory to the earth. There's different translations of it. But part of their adventure in California was to go to Disneyland. And there were 17 of them. Some of them didn't know who Mickey Mouse was. And there was some concern about managing 17 children in Disneyland. So one of the volunteers got everybody a shirt that said "Be Kind" on it. And we liked them so much that we started kind of mass producing them in our church, and we give them out as gifts all the time. And Jeff, I just loved your social media presentation that you did so much, and you were just such a beacon of kindness for me in that, because I knew nothing about Instagram, that it just felt like I wanted to give you a Be Kind shirt. The thing about wearing the shirt is kind of tricky. Oh, there it is. Yay. I almost wore mine today too. It's tricky because people see it. And I have actually people be kind to me, kinder than they were planning on being to me, because I'm wearing a shirt, like somebody who was like pulling in front of me as I was trying to cross the street. And then I saw them see the shirt and go, "Oh, you go. Is that if you're wearing it, you have to live up to it. And that can be a challenge sometimes. I've had congregants tell me that they were wearing the shirt and they were getting ready to yell at a waiter, and they either refrain from yelling at a waiter or they put their jacket on over their shirt. We also have Be Kind masks. And sometimes if I'm in a mood, I won't wear my Be Kind mask because I know I can't live up to the shirt. I don't mask, and I don't want to be a hypocrite. But it truly is, a magical thing. And we give them out all the time and people love them. So, if anybody wants a shirt, come to church. We'll give you a shirt.
Well, I cherish mine, and I'm going to be real fortunate this summer or in September. My wife and I are coming to Ventura, right in your neck of the woods,
Yeah.
and we are going to dip in and be part of a couple of your services, if not all four of them already. We're going to be there for the month, so we're looking forward to that. And this shirt is very special to me just because it reminds me of how much fun I had teaching that class
Mhm.
and just enjoying as much as I do. And you're right. There is a level of responsibility. Sometimes we forget that our license plate says "Be kind" or "Love all," and then we're not.
I
And
know. Yeah.
yeah, so I hadn't thought of it about that way. It's like, hey, maybe this is not a day I want to wear that.
I hear you.
Um, in closing, I just want to thank you so much for what you've done and what you continue to do there in Ventura and beyond. And I'm curious if you'll just share with us, hey, for those people that are watching it, they're saying, hey, I really like Reverend Bonnie's message and her kindness and her love in her eyes. How do we stay in touch with you? What's the best way?
Oh, well, probably the best way is just to go to our website, which is www.venturacsl.org. And I think everything you need to know is on there. We've got links to our Facebook page and to our social media, and a link to blog that I write in once in a blue moon. And yeah, I think the webpage is the best way to get in touch with us. And if you're in town, come by the center on a Sunday and let us know that you heard about us through Jeff's work. And hey, we'll give you a shirt if we have one. So, there you
Well,
go.
I hope they come for the message, and then the bonus is the shirt. So
Either way is fine. Maybe the
true.
shirt is the message. Who knows?
I love
Yeah.
it. Hey,
Yeah.
do you see a shift out there? Do you see a change in the community of of the things we've been talking about? Are you starting to see any softening out there that, hey, it's like a tsunami. It's not all the time. A tornado is not all the time. It does pass. And I like to say, every mountain has a top,
Yeah.
and this too has a top. What are your thoughts on that? Are you seeing some things softening out there?
You know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, because it seems like there things might be softening, but then things are popping up again. And some things, I'm not sure if everything needs to soften right away. I think some of this is coming up so that it can be healed. Um, but I do see, at least in my own community, and again, this is probably my bias speaking, I do see people more willing to listen and more willing to engage in the quiet practice of kindness, and willing to not to refrain from taking things at face value and trying to see a bigger picture. So yeah, there may be some softening. I don't know, Jeff. I think it depends on the day you ask me. I was just listening to a big vaccine debate earlier today. So, there's all of that going on, and that doesn't feel real soft to me right now. But I also trust that we're going to get through this. I think that's probably what I want to focus on is understanding that all of this is coming up for our healing. In our denomination, we say that there's nothing and no one against us. And I think it was Ernest Holmes who said, "Find me one person who is for something and against nothing." And I keep striving to see what is the lesson in this, what is calling all of us to be better, and then try and focus on that. And then honestly, the external stuff doesn't seem to have as much power. So maybe it's taken me a long time to get here in this answer, in this rambly answer, but maybe I am seeing softening, but it's in my own consciousness, and trusting that message will ripple to others, and ultimately that there will be a softening of the consciousness of the world, where there is a deeper level of respect and compassion and understanding. That's what I pray for.
I remember years ago, I had the fortune of traveling to Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and I was so impressed with the cleanliness and the efficiency. And even going through the train station, there was not a piece of paper on the ground, because they actually a machine took our tickets. So there was no reason to throw them down.
Right.
And they talked about their crime level being so low. And I said, why is that? And he said, where are you going to go? We're on an island. We have
Yeah.
to remember, we have to work with each other. And I'm like, hey, we are on an island. It's just called Earth, out in the
Right.
middle of the universe, right?
Right.
And sometimes I have to remind myself of that, is we really all are one. Even though I've been doing the practice for the last 15 or 16 years, I have to remind myself we all are one.
Yeah.
And so I think of that, and it reminds me of that. Hey, if we could all get that message, is we all are dealing with the same stuff, different
We
levels, as you
we
say, like the
are.
hula hoop, the different
Yes.
circle there. Um,
Yes.
I just have to be so grateful that you took some time today. I know you're busy, and you shared with us some insight that, quite frankly, it's a different taste, or different take on the show, because most of the stuff, like I said, mine is at ground level. I'm out on the streets
Mhm.
doing my thing, and this is what I'm seeing, and how am I applying the science of mind teaching. And you gave us a whole different view. It's almost like, hey, I got to stand on a ladder in the middle of the forest and say, hey, we are going in the right direction. Or, hey, we're making great time, but we need to change direction. We're in the wrong forest. So
Mm,
thank you
yeah.
so very much.
Oh, Jeff, thank you so much for asking. And it's always a pleasure to talk with you, no matter what the topic, it's just a joy. I'm really excited that you're coming to Ventura, and I hope we can sit down and have a chat then too.
We definitely will. I'll buy the coffee. So,
Okay, good. Thank you.
well, everybody, thank you for joining us for another episode of Spirituality at Ground Level. And again, the information is on the screen, venturacsl.org, if you want to find out more about Reverend Bonnie and her center in Ventura. And if you're in that neck of the woods, I encourage you to go check it out. It is a beautiful building. I haven't been inside yet, because I think the last time I was up there, everything was still closed down. It was in the middle of COVID. And it was kind of eerie because everything was pretty quiet up there. But I can't wait to get up there in about 32 days and venture. Yeah, being in the desert where it's very hot. We count those kind of things down. So I'm looking forward to that. By the way, what is the temperature today?
I don't know. It's probably about in Ventura. It's probably in the high 70s. In where I live in Santa Paula. It's probably mid 80s. Which is
Okay,
how about you? What's the temperature?
yeah, I think I don't even think it got into the mid 80s overnight.
Uh-huh.
So it's probably going to be, I think, 118 today.
Whoa!
Yeah, so it's gonna be a little toasty, but hey, you know
Wow!
what? That's what that pool out back is for, is to get in there and cool off every now and then. And thank goodness for air conditioning.
Perfect. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Reverend Bonnie, thank you so much again for joining us. Have a safe week, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jeff. I look
Thank you,
forward to it.
everybody. Have a great weekend.
Take care.